Naija, which way now?
Today we're going to be talking about the new tax laws in Nigeria. On June 26, 2025, President Bola Tinubu signed four landmark tax reform bills into law. The law unifies fiscal legislation governing taxation in Nigeria, and it repeals 12 legislation while amending 15 others. And this is what analysts have been saying since the new tax law became effective. They say that this is transformational and it's going to change the way of doing business and the level of revenue generation that is possible in Nigeria. What we are sure of is that these bills are transformative, and it's going to impact our economy at all levels. The changes affect VAT collection and distribution, small business tax requirements, development levies, personal income tax, capital gains, corporate tax, among many other revisions. As the bill has now been signed into law, many Nigerians still do not know what it means for them. So we want to find out if this bill will create a better Nigeria. We have with us today to shed light on the new tax laws Mr. Peter Adebayo. Mr. Adebayo is a seasoned practicing chartered accountant, a tax and management consultant, an accounting graduate from the University of Lagos with an MBA from the Lagos State University. He is a fellow of the Institute of Chartered Accountants of Nigeria, ICANN, a certified professional forensic accountant of Institute of Certified Forensic Accountant in Canada. He is a member of Chartered Institute of Taxation of Nigeria, CITN. Also, a member of the Nigerian Institute of Management, Chartered. He is an alumnus of the Lagos Business School, Pan African University, and a registered professional member of Financial Reporting Council of Nigeria. Peter Adebayo, CFCA, has over 30 years of experience in corporate and professional practice. He is currently the managing partner of Peter Adebayo and Co., a registered and ICANN licensed professional firm of chartered accountants. He is the lead consultant, CEO of 261 Consulting and Professional Services, and principal training officer at 2612 Training and Human Capital Development Center. So we couldn't have found anyone more knowledgeable about this. He's one of the brightest minds when it comes to the topic of taxation in Nigeria. That's why we thought it was very important to invite Mr. Peter Adebayo to this show, and we are very glad and grateful that he would honor our invitation. I will be here today to share with us how the tax laws can create a better Nigeria. Thank you for coming, Mr. Adebayo.
Thank you very much, my brother, for having me. It's always a pleasure.
All right, great. We'll go straight to the matter. Were overlooked in these laws. Are there loopholes that crooks we exploit? As we know in Nigeria, people are like professional loophole finders. They will study what can we do to avoid some of the impact of this law. Are there loopholes in your view?
Well, I must be
By the way,
I
if you
must be very,
identify
yeah.
loopholes, how do we mitigate those loopholes as well?
Now, as a matter of fact, I will be very sincere with you to tell you that it will be premature at this stage to begin to identify areas overlooked or loopholes to be exploited under the current laws, right? Until real implementation has begun. Now, it is along the line of implementation that likely areas of likely areas overlooked or loopholes can be identified. But generally speaking, no laws can be perfect, even in the so-called Western world. It is most unlikely that any laws will be enacted without some elements of loopholes. And that is not restricted to our tax laws, but of course, universally applicable. Now, it is also a function of your understanding or interpretation of the loopholes, what people call loopholes. Because sometimes deliberate provisions are made in the tax laws that are designed for tax planning purposes. So people tend to misinterpret them to mean loopholes. And they make use of, what they normally do is they make use of those provisions to their advantage as a taxpayer. So it doesn't make you look a crook. Now, that's what it requires is understanding of the tax laws. For instance, now, if I'm a taxpayer, there are tax provisions that say, look, if I do insurance, I take life insurance policy, whatever premium I'm paying there, I can take it as an incentive to reduce my taxable pay. If I do an HMO, whatever premium I pay to service my HMO, I can use it as an incentive. If I do under the what's it called, Pension Reform Act, the Pension Reform Act stipulates 8% minimum. If I choose to do above 8%, that extra above 8%, I can decide to use it as incentive. So that at the end of it all, by the time I aggregate all of this, they will end up reducing my income. So if I earn 2 million and I key to all of this based on the provisions of the law, and somebody else also earns a million, if he doesn't pay attention to all of this, at the end of the day, it doesn't matter that I earn a million and you earn a million. I will end up paying low taxes because I've taken advantage of those provisions in the process of trying to do my tax planning. But somebody who is not conscious of it will still pay taxes. So at the end of the day, people see it as loopholes. However, that does not mean that people cannot capitalize on certain weaknesses in the system. So, but then, like I said, it is at the point of implementation that you now begin to look at areas where they ought to have. Look at, for instance, when the Finance Act 2019 was enacted, when it came on board, it exempts organizations that run businesses with 25 billion turnover and below from CIT. But that provision did not expressly state that education tax is also exempted. So while people were exempting them from CIT, they were asking people to pay education taxes until Finance Act 2020 came on board. And it now had to expressly address the fact that, look, the moment you are exempted from CIT, you are automatically exempted from personal income tax. So it's another function of the ambiguity in our tax laws, and that is a function of interpretation. And these are some of the things that these laws are trying to address, so that there is no misinterpretation of our tax laws, as expressly clear as possible. Things are made, the provisions are stated without anybody having to misinterpret. The way you interpret might be different from the way I'm going to interpret. I interpret to suit my purpose. Another person interprets to suit his own purpose. So these are ambiguities that will come across in the tax administration system. But right now, it is still premature for us to be able to say whether there are loopholes or whether there are areas that have been overlooked until implementation begins in earnest. And of course, implementation is going to start by 1st January 2026.
Oh, that's quite interesting. Again, I put it to you that accountants are going to make money here, because why would I not want to hire an accountant who can read the laws more better than me? But yeah, that's just a joke. But in a lot of Western countries, and the reason I'm bringing up how this is done in the West is because I know that one of the objectives of the Nigerian government is to try to improve to the level that we see in a lot of more advanced countries.
Yeah.
One of the things you see is tax software, so that the software actually helps you, guides you when you file your tax return through many of these provisions and changes, so that you can take advantage of the law as much as possible. Do you think it's that time when we are going to see tax software in Nigeria?
Well, I must be very sincere to tell you at this stage that we are doing far better, and we are really improving in this area. Now, as I speak to you, I have my office in Lagos, main base in Lagos. But I'm out of Lagos now. I've been out of Lagos for the past 3 weeks, and because of this leveraging on technology that the Federal Inland Revenue Service has, put in place over the years, it has made it possible for us to seamlessly, by power of automation, file our returns irrespective of where you are located across the face of the earth. In those days, it used to be, if you get abroad, within the comfort of your home, you can file. That has been the norm in Nigeria. Now, there is the software we are using. There is what we call the tax promos. Tax promos took over from Amanda in the case of federally filed, returns. And irrespective of where you are today, you can sit down in the comfort of your home, file your returns for corporate organizations, make payment through the appropriate channels, and you're at peace. The same thing applies, to the state internal revenue services. There are still pockets of bottlenecks, across the other states. But I mean, if you look at Lagos State, for instance, you don't necessarily have to, go to tax office, unlike we used to do in those days, before you can go ahead and file. All of these things with the e-tax programs. I mean, there are e-tax platform on the e-tax platform, for instance, in Lagos State, you can go ahead and do all that you need to do as far as your personal income tax is concerned. So we are making tremendous progress as far as automation of our tax processes, in Nigeria is concerned. Of course,
But
that is not to say that
does the
we
average
cannot do better.
does the average citizen really know how to do this? And are they
Well,
taking advantage of it?
it is going to be very difficult. It is going to be very difficult. There are some people, come what may, no matter how, which way, they can never be involved. Those who can never be involved will still have to rely on those who are there. Of course, even for those who are enlightened, I would not expect you. I mean, that you are going to sit down now to say you want to file your tax by yourself. You still need tax experts. The reason why you need tax experts is because tax experts will advise you on the best way to minimize your tax exposure without infringement, on any provisions of the law. And that is why it is expected, it is advisable that whether you are an individual or you are a corporate entity, you need to make use of tax professionals, tax consultants that will provide advisory services, also help you to do your filing and returns, without with minimal exposure to tax liabilities. You can actually reduce your liability without constituting an infringement against any provision of the law, and you can do that through what tax planning methodologies.
All right. And so you talked about the consolidation of taxation in Nigeria. As a citizen, how do I know which government entity I'm owing? How do I know what I'm owing the local government, the state government, the federal government? How is that managed? How is the citizen to know what their tax responsibilities are when we still have those levels of government trying to collect tax? Is it all going to be done in one place? And then I don't know how that works. Can you please explain?
Now, there are as far as taxes that are payable by individuals are concerned, you know, they are still going to be done through the state internal revenue services, with their agencies located, across different space. For instance, for you to make your payment, you want to licensing of your. I am out of Lagos, for instance. I just discovered that a vehicle license is going to be due by next week. What did I do? I just had to get in touch with um, my agent who does that for me without any hassle. That has been done for me, and they have. So the licensing authority has jurisdiction over revenues on licensing matters. The VIO, if you go to VIO office, for instance, they do inspection. All these, what do we call these things that we do? Um, um, MOT, this certification and of roadworthiness. Of course, if you want to do roadworthiness, you still have to do that through the agency, and the agency is VIO. So there are individual agencies that are saddled with the responsibility of collecting each revenue. If you are, for instance, now you are running a hotel, all these hotel occupancy, all this whatever. I mean, as a corporate organization, your business premises, all of those ones, they will still accrue to the state internal revenue services, but there are appropriate channels through which all of these things should be paid. But then, like I said, tax enlightenment, tax education is very essential. So every individual who earns income must understand the degree to which I'm going to be exposed. What kind of taxes are you going to be exposed to? For instance, now, if I know I'm in my house, it is an obligation for me. on a yearly basis to pay land use charge. How do I pay land use charge? Of course, now these days you go to the bank, tell them in the bank, I want to pay land use charge. What do? They give you a form. You're going to fill it and you pay your land use charge. Development levy, they give you a form, you fill it. So it's enlightenment will play a very key role in all of this. Like I mentioned, it is not going to be practicable for every individual to just take it over on his or her behalf. They'll still need services of people who are competent in the understanding of the status, who can who can help them to ensure that at least they don't get unnecessarily exposed, where they can be less exposed to tax liabilities. And the timing for all of this thing is also another fundamental thing. So when they know the timing, one thing is for you to go and pay the appropriate tax. Another thing is for you to pay it at the appropriate time. So if you pay appropriately at the wrong time, you'll be exposed to late payment of the penalties and stuff like that. It's just like at the corporate level, you are supposed to have filed by 30th of June 2020, of a particular year, because you have a year end of 31st December. If you fail to file by 30th of June, if you file by 1st of July, automatically, by default, the system would have applied the rate. And by the time you get there, you just discover that late returns penalty would have been applicable.
That's interesting. Now, the other thing is, how do all of these laws apply to Nigerians in the diaspora? The reason I asked this question was that at a time I needed to, get some kind of certificate or approval in Nigeria, and they said I needed to show my tax return. I said I don't generate income in Nigeria. How do I provide a tax return? I went to read the law at the time.
Since, yeah.
Yeah, at the time I read the law, they said if you do not make like 80% or something, I can't remember exactly what they said, but I was not required to provide a tax return. These new laws, how does it impact a lot of Nigerians in diaspora who do business in Nigeria or have property in Nigeria but do not live in Nigeria?
Now, the moment there is what we call the residency and non-residency. Residency has to do with people who live in Nigeria. Now, if you live in Nigeria and you earn income in Nigeria, your income in Nigeria will be subjected to tax by the laws of Nigeria. And that's still the same position under the law. Now, if you live in Nigeria and earn income abroad, you bring the income through appropriate channels into Nigeria. That income must be subjected to tax, subject to double taxation agreement with that nation where the income has been generated. If you earn income abroad that has been subjected to tax, if that income is earned in a country where Nigeria has double taxation agreement, under the double taxation treaty, there is a relief or incentive for such category of people. So if you are abroad and you have a property in Nigeria, your staying abroad does not preclude you from paying land use charge in Nigeria. If you are in abroad and you earn rental income in Nigeria, your staying abroad as a diaspora person does not preclude you from paying taxes on the rental income here in Nigeria. As a matter of fact, the rental income that you generate in Nigeria is expected to have suffered withholding tax in the hand of your tenant. The tenants had the obligation to deduct withholding tax from your rent and give you the net. Unfortunately, the way it happens in Nigeria, people are afraid that if how will I deduct money from my landlord? He's going to send me packing. If you deduct withholding tax from your rent, your landlord cannot send you packing. If he sends you packing, you take it all with him. So that is it. So whatever that income you generate, as long as you bring it to Nigeria, it will be subjected to tax under the laws of Nigeria, subject to double taxation treaty. But where you are there and you are generating income from Nigeria, that income is going to be taxed here in Nigeria.
Good. Now, we'll be wrapping up. The whole point of this podcast is to see how we are making a better Nigeria. In your view, will these new tax laws create a better Nigeria? Are we in a better place?
Well, sincerely speaking, taxation is driven by tax system. And without having to mince word, a better Nigeria can only be achieved if government is committed to running an efficient and effective, purpose-driven, and impactful tax system. I know the composition of tax system anywhere the world over. We have the tax laws, we have the tax policies, and we have a tax administration. Now, look at these tax policies, the tax laws, all the tax laws that we have just we're talking about here. What will make the tax laws to be the impact to be felt is the extent of effectiveness that we can achieve in the implementation. So, because no matter how brilliantly enacted a set of policies or laws may be, no matter how rich the contents of the tax laws might be, I can tell you what will make the success at the end of the day is not in the beauty of the provisions of the tax laws, but in the commitment towards effective implementation of those tax laws. So if government can remain committed to efficient, effective, purpose-driven, impactful tax laws, tax policies, and tax administration, I do not have any doubt in my mind that through taxation, Nigeria economy can be better off.
That is really great. That's encouraging. This is what we all want. We want a better Nigeria. It's very easy to criticize, but we also need to find solutions to our problems. And this is the very last question, probably not a question. If there are three things that you want Nigeria to take away from this conversation, what would those three things be?
Well, Nigerians, first and foremost, I want to advocate that every Nigerian must make conscious effort to embrace enlightenment with particular emphasis on tax matters. In other words, there is need to upgrade your tax literacy, your tax knowledge. Now, ignorance of the law is not an excuse. Where people understand the laws, it becomes easier for you to do what? To play your own part as a stakeholder. So my admonition to stakeholders is that they must have knowledge of the law, they must understand the content, they must have knowledge of the provisions as stipulated, so that they will not run foul of any provision that will push them into what? Into penalty. Now, if you look at there is a phrase that says ignorance of the law is not an excuse, right? So the tax community is strongly advised to demonstrate keen interest in tax literacy, be more enlightened, so that you can avoid the imminent punitive consequences that are very costly and which may take a lot of toll on their finances. And this can be better achieved by incorporating a tax advisory into the business management architecture through engagement of tax professionals and consultants to enhance compliance. So this is absolutely very essential, because prevention is not just better than cure, it is more cheaper than cure. To obey is better than sacrifice. The sacrifices of disobedience, the sacrifices of non-compliance, the sacrifices of outright evasion are quite punitive. They are very expensive and they may be unbearable, but they are clearly avoidable. And ultimately, they will come by way of sanctions, they will come by way of penalties, they will come by way of fines, they will come by way of interest impositions, prosecutions, and ultimately there will be litigation at the end of the day. I know the cost of litigation, that will not be in the interest of the taxpayer.
All right, thank you so much. This has been a really, really informative edition of our podcast, My Better Niger. We've been talking to a seasoned practicing chartered accountant and tax and management consultant, Mr. Peter Adebayo. Thank you very much for coming, and we hope to see you again.
I sincerely appreciate your inviting me today.
My brother, light money no dey, oil sef e no dey. Which kind leaders we get for dis country?